All right. Hey, everyone. Hopefully everyone had a great week. Um, my name is Janie Angeli. Just so everyone knows, I am not a doctor. I am just a person that has gone through quite the life experience with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Um, First of all, I'd also like to thank BrightBod for letting me host this today and joining all of you. And yeah, allowing us this opportunity to get together and just meet. Now, remember, any questions that you have that are not answered today, you are welcome to go on to brightbod.com. And if you have not signed up already, you should. And there you can post any questions that you might have, or look up questions to any and all diseases or ailments that you might have as well. So you can post your question, and somebody with experience or who has been through it will get back to you and answer that. So share this with everyone and anyone that you know might need help with something. That's what it's here for. With that, today we're going to kind of continue on the discussion of Hodgkin's lymphoma, but we're going to take it a step further and talk about maintaining healthy relationships. Maintaining healthy relationships while going through such a serious endeavor as going through cancer and chemo, and how that affects our relationships with others. It can be quite daunting, absolutely daunting. So let's go on to the first slide. So how do we maintain really great relationships while we're going through something that's so stressful and we have a hard time dealing with it? Well, first things first, and it's like anything in life, the first step is that you need to have good lines of communication, and that can be really difficult. Coming from the perspective of somebody who has been in the seat of going through cancer and chemo, it can be hard to talk to people who haven't gone through it. That was probably one of the biggest deals and biggest struggles I had, was communicating with the people around me with what I needed, and sometimes I didn't even know what I needed at those times. So biggest thing is opening up lines of communication, and this doesn't even necessarily pertain to just a husband and a wife or a boyfriend and a girlfriend. It can open up to friends and family members. People get scared. They don't know how to talk to you when you're going through something because they just don't know what to say. So opening up those lines of communication, a few things that you can do if you are not the person that's going through chemo, is just offering yourself up and being open to talk with a person. That is extremely helpful. Also, there's a lot of things that you need to discuss when you are in a relationship. I find that it's helpful to write down a list of things that you need to talk about. If you are in a young, budding relationship or marriage, a list of questions and things that both you and your partner can talk to with your doctor. Both having those lines of communications open with and building that with your doctor is also extremely helpful. You're going to have lots of questions like, are you going to want to have kids someday? That is a huge and daunting question that needs to come into play when you're in a young relationship. And it's a huge factor. They're going through Hodgkin's and going through lymphoma, and having to go through radiation and chemo, it does affect your fertility. So what are some things that you and your partner are going to need to talk about? Should we see a fertility specialist? Am I going to have to freeze my eggs? If you're in a newer relationship, the question might come up, well, your eggs are going to be more viable later on if they're fertilized. Are you ready to have that conversation with your boyfriend or your husband? Do we need to fertilize our eggs down like now before I go through all this? Because there's that potential that maybe I can't have kids someday. So that is a huge factor and something that is super stressed. But one thing you need to remember is that those questions and things don't need to be answered right away. Those ones are a little more pressing, but I find that sitting down with a partner or friends and just writing down questions that you have and being open to talk about it is isn't as hard as it seems, even though it is quite the stressful time. Next up, listening. It might seem easier than said than done. This is more so for the friends and family members that are around somebody with chemo, is the listening factor. So listen to what they have to say. If they're having a bad day and maybe want some time apart, aka, hey, I just need to hang out in my room for a little while, that's okay. Let them take some time to veg, but also listen to their body language. You can tell when someone's really sad and they just need you to sit there and vent. And it can get daunting too, because you're hearing the same thing over and over and over again, but it's one of those things where listening can be quite a hard thing to do when when the topic is the same all the time. But just remember, as much as it's affecting you, it is affecting them as well. Their feelings about things change on a daily basis. They could be 100% okay with what's going on one day and completely and utterly out of it the next. And again, offer to find them help if they need it. It's going back on the communication factor. Like, it's kind of one and the other. You need to listen to them when say, hey, I don't have the right words to say, but let me help you find someone that can. So maybe that's even offering them the ability to go talk to somebody. A lot of people don't want to go to therapy because who does? Who doesn't want to feel less strong, because that's the opinion of the people or of the world around us. But there's no shame in going and seeing a therapist and having someone else listen to those problems and figuring out different coping mechanisms that we might need to deal with these situations. So maybe even if you are having a hard time listening, maybe you can provide them with something or someone that can listen to them a little bit better or in a different way. Patience. You must have patience, and that patience doesn't end within the time frame of diagnosis to having your 100% guaranteed you are free of cancer, because stressors come up all of the time, and there's triggers that kind of haunt us. We have anniversaries for everything. My anniversary is coming up here on March 4th, which is the day that I was diagnosed with having Hodgkins, which was now 4 years ago. And it's still one of those things that can trigger feelings of doubt. And even though I am feeling great and I think I'll be okay this year, you just never know. It's very overwhelming. And for somebody that is sitting next to somebody or hanging or spending time with or has friends, patience is truly needed, because yes, it does get old and you don't always want to hear about it, but it's something that just doesn't go away in a year and can take 4, 5, 6 years to actually not take care of itself, but lessen. every year it gets a little bit less, but it takes a lot of patience from the people that are around us to really help us through those situations. Uh, now that we are in the realm of having great communication and having great listening skills and being patient with each other, what about relationships and with husbands or boyfriends and girlfriends? And the question constantly comes up, is sex okay? That is a huge part of relationships. It really is. And yes, sex is absolutely okay. Should you consult your doctor? Yeah. Is there a lot of stuff that goes into play with this? Yes. Maybe a little more so than actually, maybe a little more so than when you're not going through chemo, but it is still an okay thing to do. And it really does help you maintain a great relationship with your husband, your wife, anyone else. What are some things to consider? Lubrication. Your body is changing all of the time, and that is a huge thing. Birth control. Yes, you still can get pregnant while you are going through chemo. For women, your body is changing and doing different things all the time. They might not be going through a period, but still it is a possibility. What kind of birth control are you using? Are you on a specific one? Did you decide that ahead of time that you were going to take the advice of your fertility specialist and have your body go through menopause, which is a possibility that you can do? From there, you're going to have a lot of different body changes. So it may feel good one day and it might not feel good another. And that can be very, very stressful in a relationship because you want to essentially please your partner and you don't want it to hurt them or anything else. But realizing that these things come up is super important, and it's no fault of one person or the other, but being in that realization that these things can happen is going to really help you maintain that healthy relationship. So being aware and also talking to each other about it. Some days it's going to be great, some days it's not going to be. And that's okay. There's no reason to get frustrated about that. Also, while you're going through all of this, your emotions are completely heightened. It's a stressful time in your life, and sometimes things can be overwhelming. You could be intimate with your partner, and for some reason you get overly emotional during it just because you are overwhelmed with the day. And that is something that is also okay too. So just recognizing that and being part of that and aware will really help you and your partner while going through a sexual relationship. I've been asked this often because it's something I did while I was going through everything. Can you start a new relationship? Absolutely. It's kind of funny because you feel like you are the ugliest at this point in your life. You have no hair, your eyebrows are falling out. You are kind of at that like newborn baby stage of life and looking. And you find somebody that is attracted to you while you're going through this whole process and you're so intimate and vulnerable. Yeah, you can absolutely start a new relationship. Would I say dive headfirst and get crazy? No, because they're going to see you in all sorts of quote unquote crazy ways, and that's an okay thing. For me, I was working with a person, and he saw me from the day that I found out until the final day that I had my final chemo. And did we end up staying together? No, and it wasn't a bad thing. It was really, really, it was definitely nice to have somebody that was there for me going through that. I didn't use him for me as a crutch through this situation, but it was great to gain such a wonderful friend, and we are still friends to this day. He had to put up a lot of he had to deal with a lot of shit with me being up and over all over the board during this process. But from a personal experience, I would not hesitate from starting a new relationship just because you are going through what you are currently going through. So if that's something you want to jump on into, I absolutely would. Besides relationships with partners and things, it's sometimes hard as well going through this whole process, because people are so afraid. They don't know what to do, and so they push themselves away, which can be really hurtful to a person going through chemo. But from my perspective, sometimes if they are really your friends and you really want them to be a part of your lives, you just need to tell them what you need. Whether it is going out to lunch one day, or hanging out and watching a movie, or friends that were previous exercise buddies. Ask them out on a friend date and ask them to do stuff with you. Sometimes you need to be the person that reaches out. So you, as in the person that is going through chemo, needs to be that person to reach out. There are going to be so many people that are knocking at your door all the time, and you'd be amazed at all the people that come into your world that you didn't know that you affected that way, or that they cared about you so much. But sometimes your best friends push away, and to maintain that relationship, you need to be the one to reach out. And like I said, even if it's just a simple phone call or whatever, it's just because they're just afraid as you are, and they just don't know what to do. So tell them what you need, and tell them that they're not going to break you by being around you, and they're not going to make you sick by being around you. So that is another way that you can maintain healthy relationships with friends, and not just lovers and husbands and family members of that sort. All right, we are getting towards the end here, so I'm going to take this time to open up the floor to all of you. Please feel free to reach out about any kind of questions that you might have about relationships and how to maintain them, or maybe struggles I might have gone through. No question's a bad question. I am open to answer absolutely everything. So get as, I don't know, weird as you need to, I guess.
Janie,
Yes.
this it's not a question, but I can relate to pushing people away.
Mm-hmm.
When I had my heart attack,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody wanted to do everything for me,
Mm-hmm.
when I was accustomed to doing everything by myself.
Right.
And it's like, just leave me alone, please.
Yes.
I mean, I couldn't deal with it because I was so weak, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody was just like crowding you and want to do, and they don't know what to say around you. It's like they think you're gonna break.
They do.
Yes, they think you're gonna break. You're so fragile. But
Yeah.
sometimes you're stronger than they even think you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, one thing I'd have to comment to that, I felt that way sometimes, where I can just do it myself. There were days where I don't want to have to reach out to people to take me to chemo. Like, it's not a big deal. I'll drive myself and drive myself back. You don't have to waste a day at work. Like, I can do it myself. But it's weird how they definitely seem like you're going to break. And it's that reassurance that, hey, we don't have to talk about cancer and chemo. We don't have to talk about that every day. We don't have to talk about my heart attack every day. We can gossip about Baywatch or The Voice or something. Like, my world hasn't ended, and the person that I am hasn't ended either. So trying to keep things on like a normality base, and reassuring people that you are the same and you enjoy the same things, is a good way to go about that.
Janie,
Keep them coming.
you mentioned listening.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, when you had your doctor visits, did you hear everything the doctor told you, or you wanted to have somebody there as a second person to hear what it is you didn't hear? How did you feel about that?
At first, I had somebody there with me, but the background that I have quite an odd background, and I have a lot of medical knowledge, just going through biomedical sciences and things of that nature, that I understood a lot more than my parents did when they came with me. Well, I should say my mom did when they came with me. So I did have my mom come with. I had my roommate at the time come with to another early appointment as well, because she had already gone through that whole process with a family member. So it was kind of a just in case situation, because people don't always hear the whole thing. It can be so overwhelming that you don't catch everything. So I had somebody come with me with a notepad to take notes. But for me, myself, I think I caught everything pretty well. But that's not always the case, and not usually the case for people.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
When a woman or a patient is on chemotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
they might have concerns about, their body, given that the chemotherapy, has physical consequences. So what would you tell someone who might be insecure about his or her own body as a result of going through chemotherapy? And what would you tell that person if that insecurity was stopping him or her from being intimate with his or her partner?
That's a great question. One, you yourself you haven't really changed. Your partner still loves you just the same as they did before. Yeah, it might be a little wary, and they also might feel like, hey, maybe I'm gonna hurt them. But when you are having your good days, and you will have days where you feel normal and passionate, and those are the days that you need to take a hold of. You don't have you have quite a few days where you feel really good, but why deny yourself that kind of satisfaction, especially if it was something that you used to do and enjoy so much before. But there's also a way, if you don't feel comfortable right away, take time for yourself at that same moment. Explore yourself first and see how that feels first. You're going to be more comfortable with yourself, and that will lead to being able to have better and intimate relationships. So take a little alone time, and then see where you and your partner stand after that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Janie, question.
Sure.
In your presentation,
Mm-hmm.
you spoke mostly of women, whereby they may have to freeze their eggs or whatever if they want to get pregnant or have kids, actually. So am I to take it that Hodgkin lymphoma is a female-based disease?
No, actually, it's the type of Hodgkin's I had was actually more male-based than female. When it comes to fertility, women just have more options, honestly. You don't have to freeze your eggs, but it is an option for you to go through. Some people, chemo affects way more than others. So, and it depends on the type of chemo that you go through. It could affect your reproductive system. Your doctors are going to know what type of chemo you're going through and give a recommendation off of that. For me, I did not freeze my eggs. And currently, my fertility is absolutely fine. I went and saw a specialist afterwards, and everything is more than A-okay. I have no problems in that realm, but it was a risk I took. But also, they wanted to, I could have frozen my eggs, and another option was I could have put myself into early menopause, which would have been temporary. And in doing so, obviously, that would have affected my sexual drive and how I was feeling. I would have had hot flashes, and I would have went through all of the symptoms of menopause while also going through all of the symptoms of chemo. And it is also very expensive. Your insurance doesn't cover that. And in order to do that for 6 months, it was $500 a month, and I didn't have $3,000 to spend on putting my body into menopause at that time. It was known to have amazing results, and your body comes out of it, and you're fine. It was a 98% guarantee. But I took my risk, being a young, healthy female at 26, and also being broke, that I went the opposite direction. And for me, luckily, I came out more than fine. I had a friend who also had Hodgkin's as well, male, and his reality was also fine afterwards. Yes, he was producing less than what he was beforehand, but it didn't seem to affect him at all. And now he has 2 healthy children after going through chemo. So it's a risk, and it's what you want to do. And if you do have a healthy, amazing relationship or marriage, there is a lot of times that insurance will pay for things like freezing eggs or part of that, which it's a safe bet. You can freeze some eggs, and they're going to last longer when they're fertilized with your husband's sperm. So if you guarantee you want to have that down the road, that is just doubling your chances to guarantee that you do have a family.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Looks like we have time for like one more question if anyone has one.
Yeah, another question I have, Jenny. It's
Sure.
whereby you mentioned that sometimes you find that in going through the illness and stuff like that, that folks you may push folks that try to help you away. What about negligible towards you as a patient? Have you ever experienced that, or have you heard of anyone experiencing that?
I've never really experienced anyone being negligible towards a patient at all. I just feel that people or friends will push you away just because they're scared. They're not negligible at all. They just don't know what to do. And more times than none, if you tell them what you need from them, it's not that they're happy to oblige, it's just they're afraid. They're just as afraid as you are. So they kind of stand away until you're better, because they, as we were saying earlier, with the other question, they don't want to break you. So that's why people usually push you away, but negligible, I don't think so.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Yeah. to maintain a healthy relationship, sometimes it's important to keep someone away if that person is toxic in some way or destructive, or some people would say negative. So how would you counsel someone who's not sure whether to give of himself or herself, or whether to separate himself or herself from someone else who has cancer? For instance, if someone was only in stage 1, but then he or she had a friend who was in stage 4, it might be really draining to have to try to support someone who's really, really sad. How would you counsel someone like that?
Well, personally counsel someone, I would honestly tell them to see a counselor, and or one of the best things for the two of those people to do in that kind of situation is find more people that are going through the same thing. So a support group for everyone. Somebody that is going through stage 4 is going to be going through way more than somebody that's going through stage 1. Maybe not mentally, but physically most likely. There's a lot more that is entailed with a stage 4 diagnosis, different treatments, etc. Best thing for them at first, I would say, hey, try going to a support group and a support group together. Something that they can do, but if it's something that, if you're still just not understanding each other during that time, it is also okay to take some time apart. There's no reason why you can't take a little time apart in order to maintain a healthy relationship. Space is sometimes the best thing. And there's nothing wrong with that, but communicating that, hey, I need to take care of myself and you need to take care of yourself is also a smart thing. It's not necessarily pushing that other person away. It's coming to an agreed upon situation that this is all that I can handle right now. But other than that, yeah, talking to other people that are also going through the situation together can be also very beneficial. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for all coming. We'll be looking to do another webinar next week, most likely around post-traumatic stress disorder and cancer. It happens. So hopefully you'll all be here next week. Thank you, guys.